Okay, you ready? Good evening. Oh my God. Greetings. My name's Ken Goldberg, and I want to welcome you to the solemn occasion here this evening. We have a number of luminaries here in the audience prepared to show their respects, and I want to thank all of you who came out on this dark and grim evening to pay our respects to one thing we often don't do, which is acknowledge a transition, a changing of the guard of our various forms of media. And my job here tonight is to particularly introduce one of the brainchild, the person who had this idea, who, following in the tradition of film noir and all of the innovations around it, I would have to say is probably a master of what we might call media noir. And in fact, I want to introduce Rick Reinhardt of the Berkeley Art Museum, Pacific Film Archive, as the czar of media noir.
All right, man, I need new business cards. I'm not going to be up here long. I'm just the interstitial between the introduction credits and the main program. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive and the UC Berkeley campus, welcome, everyone. We are here to celebrate or mourn the death of analog television. And I think tonight's weather has given us the beginning to the official chapter in the history books. You know, it was a dark and stormy night when television died, right? So I'm not going to do much, except I do want to thank a few people who were key to this. Everyone in the Long Now Foundation, Alexander Rose, Stuart Brand, Danielle Engelman, all the volunteers out there, terrific to work with. And then, of course, Ken Goldberg and Chris Paulson, who directed the workshop across campus, and also the staff here at the museum, Chris Fitzpatrick right over here, Dave Taylor up in the booth, and numerous others as well who work in the theater. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that we have a full program tonight, so after the talk tonight, make sure to go out, get another drink, head upstairs. There's going to be a fantastic sound art performance by Author and Punisher, followed by a video eulogy for TV by Bruce Sterling, and more artistic mayhem. So make sure to stick around, and without further ado, here's Alexander.
Thank you all for coming out. I think we're setting a record with 3 introducers for Paul. But I just wanted to say just a little bit about how this event came to pass. And I think it was Kevin Kelly, one of our other board members, who made a statement that no technology actually ever goes extinct. There's more people now making stone axes than there ever were in even 40,000 years ago. And this is one of those rare moments where actually a technology is forced to go extinct. And it seemed like a apropos thing for us as the Long Now Foundation to do. And when Richard came up with the idea, I just thought, well, there's only one person that can do this eulogy, and it has to be Bruce Sterling. If I can get him, we'll do the event. And so after Bruce agreed, and then the next person was who's going to do the history, and that was Paul. And Paul is going to give you a little bit of the lead up, and then later on you'll hear from Bruce. Paul.
So I'm here to introduce Bruce Sterling. But first I'm going to introduce Stuart Brand and Lee Felsenstein and everyone. Also, I should add, I just landed. I just flew in from Germany about an hour and a half ago. So this may be the first time in the time I've ever given talks where I fall asleep before the audience. So just poke me. You know, as I was thinking about this, I remembered a comment made by a good friend of mine, Brendan Gill, and he said, television, half Greek, half Latin, no good could possibly come from it. And I think Brendan was kidding, but let's face it, most of the rest of us in this room for most of our lives have spent our times sneering at analog television. I mean, university intelligentsia at places like Berkeley and Stanford and elsewhere. And where I went to college, though I do remember in sophomore year people fighting in the commons room between watching Star Trek and I forget what the other thing was. So for the last couple of decades, netizens have been in agreement. They've sneered at television and said, this is a waste of time. You know, this is awful. We got to build something new on the internet. And here we are at the moment of TV's passing, and we have discovered our newfound sentimentality for all things analog, which is a little odd because we've been trying to make television digital for a very long time. Hobbyists and consumers have been trying to do this sort of thing with Atari and so on. So the question to ask is, what is it that we really miss? Is this regret for analogs passing really a proxy for something else? And I suspect it may be a proxy for the sense that the digitization of television may just be profoundly wrong-headed, especially compared to what's going on the internet in general and the web in particular. But first, go back in time 60 years ago, and you think of the birth of television. Now, Bruce is going to go further into the past, but I go back to the early 1950s when TV started to take off, and that was the period that once upon a time television was like the web is today, a period of wild experimentation, entrepreneurs with shoestring budgets, big ideas, and very little adult supervision trying to do all sorts of crazy things. This, of course, is the famous first interactive television show, Winky Dink and You, Winky Dink and Me. It had a book spin-off line, and you put an acetate sheet on the screen, and you drew in things to help save Winky. It was actually a big success, even though as interactivity it was a little dissatisfying by our standards. It was on the air from 53 to 57, and then abruptly pulled off the air, not because people weren't interested, but parents suddenly realized their children were placing their heads 2 feet away from a very poorly screened cathode ray tube. This individual is actually a member of the California State Assembly, and part of the reason why we don't have a budget. But it wasn't just that. We from the very start tried to make analog TV interactive. In addition to Winky Dink and the like, we had the television remotes, the Zenith Flash-O-Matic, my favorite device, the first TV remote that it actually didn't work. It was sort of like the web. And its successor, the Space Commander, which did. So we kept trying to make TV more and more interactive. That was a period when TV was new, and it was entrepreneurial. And a funny thing happened in the early 60s. TV grew up. You know, it grew up, started growing up in the 60s, and in the last decade or so, it grew old. I mean, think about the ads that you see on television today. They're aimed at people over 70. But it grew up in the 60s with color TV. And that need to convert to color cameras and color equipment was what sort of squeezed the solo entrepreneur, the crazy ideas out of television, and it got sort of more and more the land of the suits and the adult supervision. And occasionally wacky things managed to find their way in, but for the most part it became more and more established. TV today, however, in my opinion, isn't dead. It simply fled to the internet. Think about what happened over the last couple of years. It was, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that we had the first talk show in cyberspace, Layman Lacademian and This Spartan Life, which is the only talk show I've ever watched where, one time the guest got shot and killed before finishing the interview. And then, of course, more recently, just like the 1950s when things came out of nowhere and took off like a rocket, we have Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Who knew Doogie Howser could sing? And it's been a huge, huge success. It's now on a DVD. And then, of course, we have Hulu, which, is sort of the hottest thing in Hollywood at the moment. This is what, all the sweetie, sweetie, baby, baby, have your girl call my girl, let's do lunch types are all buzzing about. And television really has fled to the web. So TV is alive. It just happens to be digital, which raises a really interesting question. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing digital TV? And it is better than analog without a doubt in some ways. More channels, more quality, the opportunity for new kinds of experiences. But I don't know about you, I cannot quite escape the sense that maybe digital television is a colossal oxymoron. In the same way that HD, DVD, and Blu-ray, and everybody fought the big battle, and then the battle was over, and basically consumers said, we'd rather watch it on the internet, And so the more consumer electronics companies are all dressed up with nowhere to go, or rather nobody to sell to. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion, but you do have that sense that digital TV is just a little corporate and a little square. It's controlled by the suits, not controlled by the wacky folks who are doing the wonderful things on the internet. So I think we actually, getting back to the main point, we've got to examine why we care about analog. And do we care about analog, or do we care about television? Now, there's a couple of things we should care about. One thing that everybody in this room should care about is the laggards, the people who have not been able to make the conversion to digital. And they're probably in your neighborhoods. And one thing I suggest you do when you go home after this is over is look around. The little old lady who watches soap operas in her house, and she's got a 20-year-old television, and she either doesn't have a converter or she has one and she doesn't know how to fiddle with the digital antennas. Unlike old-fashioned TVs where you got snow if you had bad reception, with digital you get a digital cliff and there's no signal. We should all be looking out for our neighbors and helping people make that transition, because there are a lot of people, a lot of laggards where TV is important in their lives, and they're not geeks like us. And I tried to suggest that amateur radio clubs should go out and do this as well. But we also need to examine what we care about. Is it TV or is it digital? And maybe it's a different kind of analog than the analog we're losing. Because I actually think this is not about bits versus waves. It's about freedom. It's not about technology. It may be about privacy. Digital TV does one thing, and it allows you to encrypt. It allows you to charge. So it's in some ways an end of a commons. And there are other technologies, other wireless technologies out there that have been analog that are going to digital, and that may be a problem. Devices like this is state-of-the-art in police scanners. This is a technical crowd. I'm sure somebody here has an AOR communications receiver. When our police messaging goes digital, they can encrypt it, and we can't listen. And that may be a problem, because we need to watch Big Brother. And when Big Brother can shut the public out and nobody can listen, that may be a great social ill. It's not the freedom to watch. It's the freedom to watch back, as this graffito that I found up in Toronto some years ago. This is what we must focus on, in my opinion. This is the part of digital that I think we'll miss. But I digress. Tonight is a wake, and it's a time of celebration and recognizing passing. So let us, as we go out and have drinks, celebrate analog television's decades of goofy gifts to us all, like these. Show of hands, how many people remember the apple cobbler under the little aluminum hat? And if you ate it too soon, it was like molten lava in your mouth. Or the Brady Bunch. And who could possibly forget Andy Williams's Christmas special? And that, of course, that icon of 20th century telemarketing, Ron Popeil and the Vegematic. None of this could have been possible without the wild inventors of the early analog age. But meanwhile, it's also important to keep in mind, analog TV is not dead. In fact, it's immortal. We started sending this stuff out into space decades ago. We started by bouncing it off the Echo satellite, which is why we all have Mylar, and it gets scale. That's a guy down at the bottom there. This was the biggest government beach ball. This was before Proxmire. Bouncing it off Echo, and by 1962, we were beaming it and relaying it off the Telstar satellite. TV is forever. And, Teilhard de Chardin, if he was here, would instantly recognize this as a 60 light year in diameter noosphere moving out at the speed of light. Television we have 32 star systems within 15 light years, 133 stars visible in 50 light years. When this show went on, whoops, this is something out of order. This is a view of the 60 light years around us. And when I Love Lucy went on air in 1951, and it started passing outward, now just think about which stars it's gone past. By 1955, Lucy had passed Alpha Centauri, the same year that Roy Kroc founded McDonald's. By 1957, 6 years later, it was going past Barnard's star, just when Whammo invented the Frisbee. 15 years later, 1966, the Vietnam War, it crossed Altair, and of course that was the same year that the first pirate radio station anchored off the coast of Britain. And 40 years before we discovered planets around Gliese 876, television passed those planets that may perhaps be habitable. So, we've discovered approximately 200 extrasolar planets so far, but maybe they discovered us first. And they're sitting out there watching reruns of Gilligan's Island or Laugh-In. And now television is approaching the Hyades cluster, and who knows what alien presences are wondering about who in the world did this stuff. So one wonders, who is watching Andy Williams even as we speak? Who is watching us? But also, perhaps, we weren't the only ones to invent analog television. So maybe we shouldn't recycle our television sets just yet. Instead, perhaps we should aim our rabbit ears at a little steeper angle and get out some aluminum foil and make a parabolic dish and aim it at the sky, because who knows what signals are headed our way. Thank you.
That's it in here. If you guys want to head out for drinks, and then we'll be upstairs next with Author and Punisher.